Hello and welcome to MA Computing. Today we're going to be covering how to configure static NAT on a Cisco router, a Cisco network. Okay, again we're going to be using a Packet Tracer 5.2. The first thing we're going to do is drop two routers into the work area. So router 1, router 2. Okay, then we're going to do one end device, not two end devices, and we're going to connect the end device via a crossover cable to router 1, or router 0 as it's named. Okay, I'm going to connect that to fast Ethernet 00. Okay, and at the moment I don't want to connect these because I want to create what's called a serial link, as if we was actually setting up a proper Nat Translation. Okay, so before we, at the moment, we've only got access to fast Ethernet 00 and 01, and we can connect a console cable to it if we wanted to. So we're going to have to upgrade this router slightly. So to double click onto the router, on the actual layout here, we've got a power off button. We click the power off button, okay, and the module we're interested in is a WIC1T. Click and hold that device and drag it into one of the ports. Okay, once we've dragged that into the ports, we can power the device back on. Okay, and we can come off that device for a moment and do exactly the same on the other router. Okay, remembering to power it off. If you don't power it off, this is what happens. Okay, cannot add a module when the power is on. Obviously it's a safety warning. Okay, in the real world you wouldn't get that warning and you could end up breaking your router. So some routers are hot swappable, which means you can actually push in new interface cards while the unit is switched on, but unfortunately this isn't one of them. Okay, so I've powered off the unit, dropped in my serial interface, and now I'm going to power on the router. If I come over to CLI, you should now be seeing that actually boot up. Okay, I'm going to close that screen while that happens, and while that's happening, we're going to use what's called a serial DCE cable. Okay, a DCE cable relies on what's called a clock rate in order to communicate to its adjacent router. Okay, these can be set at various rates, but obviously it has to be compatible with both the routers which are being interconnected. Okay, if you're lucky enough to have an automatic clock sense and stuff like that, we can actually use this cable here, which is called a DTE cable, which doesn't need a clock rate setting. Okay, but more often than not we'll be used to seeing this. If you wish to sort of look into the differences between these two cables completely, just do a little bit of research on Google. Okay, so click onto DCE cable, even got me doing it wrong there. Serial 020 on my device is where it's set it up. It's because of the slot I've decided to connect it to. Okay, and then I'm going to click onto the other router, and again it's 020. Okay, just making sure that both ends are on the serial. If you get it wrong, it won't allow you to connect it anyway. Okay, now at the moment we've got no IP addresses set up on any of these devices. The first device I'm going to set up is going to be router 0. So double click, come to the CLI command. Okay, and we're going to say no at this stage. Press enter to get started. Okay, let's go to enable and let's go to config terminal. Okay, and we're going to concentrate first of all on fast Ethernet 0/0. Okay, and the network address we're going to use for this exercise is going to be a class C address, because this is going to be our private network. So I'm going to use 192.168.1.1 with the standard subnet mask. Sorry, and that's my fault again. I forgot to write IP address, I'm afraid. So do that again. Okay, so that's what we should have typed. And remember to issue the no shut command to actually start that port and activate that port. You can see the port's gone to green, okay, which is a good sign. Okay, now we're going to configure the serial zeros to 0. Okay, so we've got to come back one, so type exit, interface, serial 0/2/0. Okay, and the IP address we're going to use on this end is going to be a public address. Okay, so basically one which is internet routable, so you could gain access to external networks. Okay, not internal networks, please don't get mixed up with the two. Okay, and the net mask is going to be 255.0.0.0. Okay, and we're going to issue a no shut command at this stage. Okay, now we're going to close that just for now. We'll come back to that router at some stage. We're going to come to the PC and configure the PC, come over to desktop, go to IP configuration, and then we'll type 192.168.1.2 and 255.255.255.0 for the subnet mask, 192.168.1.1 for the default gateway. Okay, so the gateway of the router which we're attached to, which is here. Okay, now we're going to come over to router 1 and continue with configuration dialogues. We've not used this at the moment, and return to get started. Enable to enable the router, config T, okay, and first interface I'm going to configure is going to be interface serial 0/2/0. Oops. And before I press enter, I'll just move this out of the way so you can see this is the port we are concentrating on now. Okay, so press enter, and because this here, the port from here to here, are going to be part of the same network, we're going to configure an IP address, obviously in the range of the networks which we configured this side. Okay, so we're going to use 99, not 9999, 99.99.2, and remembering to use the same subnet mask at both ends, otherwise we're going to run into trouble. Whoops, again I've forgotten to type IP address. I put interface for some reason, so 99.99.99.2 255.0.0.0, and I forgot to put the add this time. Okay, remember to issue the no shut command and change the state to the up state, which is good, and we're going to go to interface fast Ethernet 00. We need to come back one first. Okay, and now we're going to create another class C network. So this network could be another private network, if you like, if you had other computers and devices on this side attached to this port. Okay, but we're not going to have devices over here. We're just going to configure this port, and that's all we need to actually show that NAT, static NAT, will be working at the end of this exercise. Okay, so the IP address we're going to use this time is going to be 192.168.10.1, and the subnet, forgetting again, is IP address. Let's come back. .255.0. Again, issue the no shut command. Okay, so we've got the IP addresses now set up on the devices. We've not set up anything else as of yet. Okay, so by looking at this port is up, this port is up, and this port is up. You can't see over here whether this port is up because we haven't got a device connected to it. But if you put your mouse just over the top of it, you should be able to read on screen now that fast Ethernet 00, it's got where it says link at the top here. It won't let me come down to it. Where it's got link, it says up, and it's got the IP address with the 10.1/24 network. Okay, so we know that's all good to go. All right. Now, if I come to this device here, and I'm going to come back to the root of the router, okay, from the enable option, and I'm going to ping, just minimize that down, I'm going to ping from this router to this router to see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to do 99.99.99.2, not 3, which is this port here. Okay, and we can see it says it's going to time out in 2 seconds. Okay, so each try in between each ping, there's 2 second timeout. Now you can see the success rate is 0%, 0 out of 5, which is what I expected. Now, if you remember, when I first connected this cable here, we used what's called a DCE serial cable. Now, in order for this to communicate from this router to this router, we must set a clock rate. Okay, and the clock rate gets set on the end of the cable where you can see this clock next to the interface. So if this clock was at this end, we'd set the clock rate on this side instead. But as we started the connection from this end, Packet Tracer tends to use the first side of your connection as the clock rate. Okay, right, so now if we come back to this router, to the router 0, we come to the config terminal, and we come into interface serial 0/2/0, and I know a clock rate which is compatible with both sides of this router is 56,000 bits per second. Okay, oops, and remember to leave a space in between clock and rate, otherwise it won't work. Okay, now we've actually set the clock rate. You can actually see now line protocol on interface 0.2.0 has changed the state to the up state, which is what we wanted it to do. So now if we come back to the root of the router and we ping 99.99.99.2 being this port, you can now see we've got a success rate of 100%, which is what we should have. Okay, that's absolutely fine. Okay, that was what we was trying to achieve on this router. Now that we're actually on this router, we're going to come back to the interfaces, and for the purposes of Nat Translation, so basically Nat Translation is turning one address, which is from a private address, into an internet routable address. Okay, so the internet routable address has to be part of the network you're trying to translate to, otherwise it won't recognize it. Okay, so if I was to use the same address here and try to translate it into another 192 address, this isn't going to recognize it because it isn't part of its network. Okay, it's no good in that sub network. All right, so if we come back to this router now, and we're going to go to config, no, not config, sorry, interface, and we're going to go to the FA0/0, so fast Ethernet 00 to begin with. We have to issue a command which one is the inside network and which is going to be the outside global network. Okay, the inside obviously is, if I had lots of computers here inside my building, in my office building, those would be my inside addresses, and these would be my outside addresses to the world, to the internet. Okay, so what we now need to do is type in IP NAT inside. Okay, because we're on FA0/0, and this is going to be our inside of our router. Okay, so now that one's done, we come back, exit one, and we're going to go to interface S0/2/0. Okay, and we're on this port now. Okay, and this is going to be the outside global address. Okay, IP NAT outside. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense to you. Now what we're going to do here is come back one to the config And now what we need to do, we have to type in the command IP Nat Source Address, basically, so source static, and we now need to put the address of the port which is on the inside, the inside being your IP NAT inside network, which is 192.168.1.1, I believe. Yes. And now we need to also put the outside address to the network we're attaching to. Okay. So in my case, this address is part of this network, and this address. So I'm going to use the outside address closest to the outside world, if you will. But you could use this address or that address. Okay. We're going to use 99.99.99.2 and press enter. Oops. There's something I forgot to do here. Let's have a look. Yes. Okay. So it's IP NAT inside source. So I forgot to write the inside as in the inside network here. Static address of, and then we should be good to go. Okay. So that side of it is now done. And now we need to come to this router to give it a path back into this network, okay? Because without a way back into this network, Nat Translation isn't going to work. So we have to create what's called a static route, okay? So I'm going to close that down just for a second. We're going to come over to this interface on, come over to this router. I'm going to come back and exit one. And we're going to issue an IP route. And then first of all we put the network, so 000 means any network, and 0.0.0.0 again means any subnet, okay, any subnetworks, and then the interface which the Nat Translation is coming from. Okay, so you can put the IP address of this port if you wish, or you can actually just type the interface. And the differences between the two is, if you actually use the name of the interface, if you ever change the IP address of this network for whatever reason you may have to, you won't have to change the IP address, and you won't have to reconfigure it, because it's just looking at the port number. So it doesn't matter whether you change that address, providing the other end of the link is also changed and part of the same network. Okay, so now we've done a route from that network. We should now have Nat Translation pretty much complete. And how we go about testing this, if we come out of here, go to exit, and then we type in ping, but this time don't type an address in at this stage. And where it says protocol IP, it means what protocol we're going to use. We're going to use a different protocol to communicate with, then we type something different now. But for this exercise, just press enter at this stage, and the target IP address of what we're trying to ping to. So I'm going to try and ping to this port here, which is 192.168.1.1, okay, because this is the other side of this network. Now if it doesn't work, it won't allow me to ping into here, okay, because we won't have a route into that network. Okay, repeat times, how many times do you want it to repeat the ping? So I'm going to put about 20 this time. I don't want 5 because sometimes it happens too quickly. Okay, for the next few things we just press enter, time out in seconds. We can leave all of this the same. Okay, and you can see now that's actually sent 20 different pings. If we come to this router now and press Control and Z, and if we type in IP NAT oops, yeah, sorry, my fault. What we should be doing here is typing show first of all. I knew there was something I missed. IP Nat Translation, and you can see that all these translated addresses have actually come from this router, okay, because this is the port 99.2. this is this is the IP address. This is a port which is being generated by each one of the ICMP, in other words pings, okay, which is generated automatically, and you can see that this is actually doing what it's supposed to, okay, and it's telling you where the address is coming from, whether it's a global address or an inside address. The inside address is the inside network, the global address being the addresses on the outside network on this router. Okay, now just to show you that happening again, just to show you it isn't me just pretending it works, if I come to this router again and I type in clear IP Nat Translation, just put a star at the end, okay, and that should clear. So if I put show IP Nat Translation there, you'll see that you've only got the global and the inside, but you've got no outside local and no outside global addresses showing at the moment because no translation's gone on. Okay, so we just come back to this router again and we're going to run the same command again, ping, if it'll let me go back through now, 192.168.1.1. Sorry, that's my fault. Ping protocol. I'm always typing the IP address there because it's like you're supposed to, but you don't. You press enter, then you type the IP address when you do it this way. Okay. Okay, this time I'll do 40 just to show you it's going to generate even more traffic at this stage. Okay. Again, we can just press enter a few times. Okay, and while that's going on, I'll come back to this router and I'll type show IP Nat Translations, and you can now see there's a fair amount of traffic, and you see where it's got more down here, which proves there's more than 20 this time. So if you was to count each and every one of these translations, you should have 40 in total because that's the amount of pings we did. Okay, so thank you for watching. We're going to in the next exercise we're going to continue with Nat Translation, but we're not going to be using static. We're going to be using dynamic NAT. Okay, so thank you for watching. I'm Matthew, this is MA Computers. Please leave your comments and thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.